Hi, guys. So today we're going to talk about a little secret of mine I love to teach. I've labeled this the real reason why you struggle with a low sense of value. And it's not your fault. So there's this concept I teach called a value center or value baseline. Value baseline or value center is a principle point of reference that we use to measure our sense of value. Okay. When we grow up in a system or a relationship or a family where value is established in a certain way, then that becomes our baseline. That baseline becomes the measure in which we compare ourselves to people, places, and things outside of ourselves. And it's how we try to measure where we belong. And it's a very analytical, problematic way of looking at things. Hey, Brent, nice to see you. Depending on what that center is, you will either feel worthless or you will feel appreciated and valued. Now, in healthy family dynamics, the parent and the child have what's called a reflective relationship where they're feeding each other positive, kind, and direct information about how each other are impacting or affecting each other. In toxic relationships, that message is typically shame, burdenship, you're a problem, get out of the way, be quiet, be invisible, obey, comply. And that teaches the child, especially if that's coming from what I call a trusted authority, which could be a parent, a teacher, a religious figure, somebody the child esteems as an authority over themselves. That kind of feedback shapes the value center for that child. The child begins to associate their value emotionally with either shame or love. And if it's associated with shame, then they start to look for ways to get love. And typically in toxic relationships, that shows up in becoming what I call a utility to the other person. This is where the codependent dynamic begins. This is where we end up mastering the ability to please and anticipate people's reactions, behaviors, feelings, needs, wants, that kind of thing. It's where we start thinking about fixing people so that they'll like how they feel about us. This is where we get into controlling things, nagging, nitpicking, trying to shape them into what we want them to be so we can feel love. Yeah, right. It's toxic. We grew up in a system that was toxic too, David. That system taught us that our value was completely rooted in obedience rather than in who we are. And that's the other angle here. People have a resilient sense of self, have a value center based in love. They have accepted positive, safe love from people around them and have internalized it as something they deserve to feel about themselves. When we don't feel like we deserve to feel that about ourselves, we're coming from a shame value center. So, and what happens when we come from a love value center is we start exchanging and contributing in our relationships from a place of interest and desire and spontaneity and an attentiveness to the other individual. See, love is a funny thing because it's not all about feeling good, and happiness, Disneyland, Disney World, or Disney-ish. Yes, it is, Dave. And the trick with love is it's attentive to what brings a natural joy to both ourselves and the other person. If you've followed me for long, or if you've known me a long time, this is kind of a broken record. Relationships have to be reciprocal, and love is a consideration of me and you, whereas toxic relationships is dominantly a consideration of them. If we're on the codependent spectrum of the toxic dynamic, then it's you only. If I'm on the narcissistic side of that toxic dynamic, or actually the abuser toxic side of it, then the perspective is me, me, me. What's in it for me? What do I get out of this, right? And so that's why we have this interchange problem, and it's all rooted in the value center on both sides. The toxic person, the abuser, for instance, rooted in shame. The codependent, rooted in shame. The interdependent, where we have functional, reciprocal, safe relationships, rooted in love. Love for self and for other. So that way we're able to contribute with an attentiveness. We know what a person wants, so we'll get that for them. We know what will hurt, so we don't do that unless it's absolutely necessary. Now, that doesn't mean we please them. If they've got reactions to normal day things, like you've got a complaint, hey, I'm kind of frustrated, Marshall, that you haven't done the dishes for 2 days. Could you do them? And I turn around and go, what the hell are you talking about the dishes for? And explode. That's unhealthy. That's unreasonable. And I would need to really take that in, because I'm toxic at that point, because now I'm destabilizing the safety and the trust and the fidelity of the relationship with my explosive behavior. Now that behavior is likely rooted, we could link that to a trigger, and then I need to go in and work that out. Now, this brings up a little caveat. I'll just run with this rabbit trail. Generally, people are not toxic, but their behaviors can be. And so when we're evaluating people, we're evaluating active relationships or new relationships in our lives. We need to be focused on the pattern of behavior that shows up with them, because that's the judgment call for us. It's like, this is chronically toxic. Time to get out. It's time to find somebody, or develop friendships and relationships with people who are healthy in how they reciprocate, healthy in how they put their complaint on the table, healthy in how they take feedback and accountability, healthy in how they show and ask for intimacy and expression and connection, things like that. But again, that's rooted in love. People who are loving and kind, dominantly are rooted in a sense of love, both for themselves and others. The rest of the dynamic is going to have shame as a dominant driver. So healing, this is why I focus dominantly on healing shame first. My system and my approach to codependency, toxic relationships, rooting out toxic behaviors within people, because I've had to do that in myself, and a lot of my clients are like, well, I have this toxic behavior too, gotta root that out. Really starts at shame. When we get rid of shame and we integrate love, everything else aligns itself for our betterment. We can see our relationships clear. We can see our own value. We can feel our value, and we can choose from that value, because love is that value. Love is not earned, again, and love is felt and transacted. It's both a feeling and an action. So this value center is what is really the crux of the matter. And it breaks down to what I call a love equation. That love equation says I'm worthy of love or being loved when X, Y, or Z are met. That's a common equation, but it's actually a toxic equation, because it's got conditional variables on it. And it says I am lovable when X, Y, and Z are met. Toxic equation. But guaranteed, if we grew up in a toxic system, an abusive family, or we've been subjected to an abusive relationship for long enough, we will have shaped our worthiness around an equation like that, which means we're coming from shame. Shame always advocates for an idea of earning something. Well, we've got to be worthy, so how do we do it? So that we can satisfy the rules, or whatever these magical limits are we put on ourselves. But when we come from love, the love equation shifts to I'm lovable equals I'm lovable. It's circular. There isn't an argument. There's no way to break the variable, because it's rooted in equality. It's rooted in us as a state of being, as a fact. So there's no argument. There's nothing here to say. If someone comes up to you and says, you're not lovable, or you're a piece of trash, something's wrong with you, you'll be like, sounds like you got a problem with that. I hope you work that out. Because that equation, I'm lovable equals I'm lovable, ends the problem. They can go off and do whatever they need to do to fix their jealousy, their insecurity, whatever's driving them. But we become more and more immune to having our sense of love shifted towards shame, because it's going to be one or the other. So that's why I focus on shame. This is why you have, If you've struggled with a low sense of value, there is a shame component and an equation running in there. We can shift that over. We shift it by giving ourselves permission simply to be lovable, and then begin to explore feeling that, choosing from it, and being that. That's what the heal process does. That's what I specialize in. That's why I work with codependents, because we're beautiful, powerful, brilliant people who have been injured. I tend to look at codependents as lovers that got really hurt. We got hammered in the heart big time. And now we tried to find a way to get through it. So we became pleasers and fixers, controllers, enablers, caretakers, and avoiders. Because that was the way we could navigate the minefield to get to love. That's all. There's nothing wrong with it. It helped us survive. That's why I call it a coping mechanism. It's not a disease, it's not an identity, and it's not a flaw. It's actually an expression of your brilliance. So we get back to love, then we don't have to use codependent habits anymore. We can become direct and advocating, and we start choosing people, places, and things that inhabit that energy of love themselves. Because we see it in ourselves, and we can see it in them too. So if you struggle with this low sense of value, this shame-centered, guilt-centered, unworthy sense of self-centered value, reach out to me. We can work that out using the heal process, other tools I have to help you reconnect with the brilliance that you are. I appreciate you guys being here. I'll be back on Monday. Today I'm getting ready. Just a few minutes, go get my kids. We're going to have a birthday party. Love you guys, and remember that you're worth knowing, you're worth loving, and you're worth keeping. And if you want to join, you want to get active in this, go to pass.freetheself.com, and you can join the TAP Thrive All Access Pass and get to work on this through my self-guided system. Or you can go to workshop.freetheself.com and learn how I heal codependency and this love center issue through the heal process. Thank you guys for being again for being here, and we'll talk to you on Monday. Thank you. Bye-bye.